On March 15th, 2019, a single password brought down 40% of the internet for 6 hours. That password, password 123. This is the story of how 8 characters and 3 numbers created the most catastrophic digital failure in human history. Every day, billions of people rely on the internet's invisible infrastructure. We assume it's bulletproof, managed by the world's brightest minds with military-grade security. But what if I told you that behind the scenes, critical systems protecting our digital lives are sometimes secured with passwords so weak a child could crack them? The incident we're about to explore didn't just inconvenience users checking social media. It crashed banking systems, grounded flights, and cost the global economy an estimated $47 billion in just 6 hours. At the center of this disaster was Nexus Global Infrastructure, a company most people had never heard of, yet one that managed critical internet backbone services for thousands of major websites and applications. Think of them as the invisible plumbing of the internet: content delivery networks, DNS services, and load balancing systems that keep your favorite websites running smoothly. Nexus handled traffic routing for over 12 million domains, including major e-commerce platforms, streaming services, and even government websites. Their systems processed over 2 trillion requests daily, making them one of the most critical yet unknown companies in the digital ecosystem. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite managing such critical infrastructure, Nexus had grown rapidly through acquisitions, inheriting a patchwork of legacy systems and security practices. Their crown jewel was a master control system called Atlas, a centralized platform that could instantly reconfigure traffic routing across their entire global network. Atlas was protected by what cybersecurity experts call defense in depth: multiple layers of security including firewalls, intrusion detection, and access controls. But there was one glaring weakness: the system administrator account that could override all these protections was secured with a password that hadn't been changed since 2014. The password 23 had been set up during Atlas's initial deployment by a contractor who was supposed to change it after the system went live. That contractor left the company 3 weeks later, and somehow this critical security step fell through the cracks. For 5 years, this digital skeleton key sat unnoticed in their systems. What made this even more dangerous was that this wasn't just any admin account. It had what's called God mode access, the ability to instantly push configuration changes to thousands of servers worldwide without the usual safety checks and approval processes. It was designed for emergency situations, but it became the very tool that would create the biggest emergency in internet history. The attack began at 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time, on what seemed like an ordinary Friday. A group calling themselves Digital Anarchists had been quietly probing infrastructure companies for months, using automated tools to test common passwords against exposed administrative interfaces. When their script hit Nexus's Atlas system, they couldn't believe their luck. Within minutes, they had full administrative control over one of the internet's most critical pieces of infrastructure. But instead of stealing data or demanding ransom, they had something more dramatic in mind. At 4:12 a.m., they began implementing what they called Operation Cascade, systematically redirecting traffic from major websites to non-existent servers. But they didn't do it all at once. They were smart about it, creating a slow-building crisis that would be harder to diagnose and fix. First, smaller e-commerce sites started experiencing intermittent outages. Then, social media platforms began showing error pages. By 6 a.m., major streaming services were down. By 8 a.m., online banking systems across 3 continents were inaccessible. The attackers had weaponized the internet's own efficiency against itself. What happened next was unprecedented. As more systems went offline, the remaining infrastructure became overloaded with traffic from users frantically trying to access their services. This created a cascading failure effect, like a traffic jam that keeps getting worse as more people try to find alternate routes. Airlines couldn't access booking systems, causing flight delays and cancellations. Emergency services in several major cities lost access to their dispatch systems. Stock markets experienced wild swings as automated trading systems couldn't connect to data feeds. Even some hospitals had to postpone non-critical procedures because their systems couldn't access patient records stored in the cloud. The economic impact was staggering. Every minute of downtime cost the global economy an estimated $130 million. E-commerce sites alone were losing $15 million per minute during peak hours. But the human cost was equally significant. Millions of people couldn't work, communicate with family, or access essential services. By 9 a.m., Nexus's emergency response team had identified the source of the problem, but fixing it proved incredibly challenging. The attackers had made hundreds of configuration changes across thousands of servers. Simply reverting everything could cause even more problems if done incorrectly. The solution required coordinating with internet service providers worldwide to implement emergency routing changes, while Nexus systematically restored their systems. It was like performing surgery on a patient while they are running a marathon. At 2:43 p.m. Eastern Time, nearly 11 hours after the attack began, the last major services came back online. But the damage was done. The incident had exposed just how fragile our digital infrastructure really is, and how a single point of failure could bring down systems worldwide. The Password 123 incident became a watershed moment for cybersecurity. Within 6 months, new regulations required infrastructure companies to implement mandatory password policies, multi-factor authentication, and regular security audits. The incident led to the creation of the Global Digital Infrastructure Security Council, an international body dedicated to preventing similar failures. Nexus Global Infrastructure never recovered from the reputational damage. They were acquired by a competitor within a year, and their CEO became a cautionary tale in business schools worldwide. But perhaps more importantly, the incident fundamentally changed how we think about password security and infrastructure protection. One password, 8 characters, $47 billion in damages. The Password 123 incident proved that in our interconnected world, the weakest link can bring down the entire chain. It's a reminder that cybersecurity isn't just about protecting individual accounts. It's about protecting the digital foundation that modern society depends on. If this story opened your eyes to the hidden vulnerabilities in our digital world, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into cybersecurity incidents that changed everything. What's the weakest password you've ever used? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, your password choices matter more than you might think. The internet recovered from this attack, but the lessons learned continue to shape how we secure our digital future. Sometimes the biggest disasters come from the smallest oversights.